tonight's presentation.
Punxsutawney Phil and His Weather Wisdom by Julia Spencer Moutran, Ph.D. Performed by Terry Bradshaw.
Chapter 1. Meet Phil and his forecasting family. Punxsutawney Phil lives in a secret underground burrow on the Byler family farm in the valley of Gobbler's Knob. Gobbler's Knob is the site of the tallest mountain in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. Phil shares his burrow with his family, which includes his wife, Philomena, his cousin, Barney, his 9 children, and their pet woolly bear caterpillar, Isia. Phil is a groundhog. Groundhogs, or hogs for short, are also called woodchucks or whistle pigs because they can whistle loudly to warn their families of danger. Punxsutawney Phil is more than an ordinary woodchuck. He is a forecaster, a meteorologist. He studies and predicts the weather based upon evidence and judgment. Phil knows how important it is to study the weather because weather is the most talked about topic in the world. It affects everyone, including Phil and his family. All of Phil's children are cleverly named after the weather and their own personalities. First, there's Sunny, a friendly, bright, and warm girl. Next, there's Halo, a golden gal who never gets into trouble. Unlike the real sun and its halo, Sunny and Halo live underground where it is sometimes a little dirty and hectic. Whoosh! Watch out, for here comes Tornado, the noisiest, messiest, and dirtiest hog in the house. Tornado can be louder than a freight train when he passes by. Here comes Typhoon, a whistle pig who whistles like the wind when he feels a little stormy. Brrr. It can also be a little chilly inside Phil's home because there are some rather cool characters in his family. There are the twins, Frosty and Crystal, 2 snow-white groundhogs, who can be somewhat icy or unfriendly. Then there is Gray Celsius, who can be a real zero. He's moody, and sometimes he is hot, sometimes not. Crash! Move out of the way, for here comes Wendy, the hog who is always moving about. He's busier than any beaver. Last but not least, meet Foggy, the youngest groundhog who is always being teased by his brothers and sisters. Foggy has a habit of getting things mixed up. You might say he is in a fog. Inside the family burrow, there are secret winding tunnels that lead into different rooms. There are 21 rooms at present, including 10 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, a kitchen, a dining room, a living room, a nursery, and a den. When Phil and his family built their burrow, they met Isia while digging in the earth. Ever since then, Isia has been a member of their family. The den is Phil and Isia's favorite room, for it is Phil's weather station. It is here where Phil and Isia meet to conduct their weather experiments. In the weather station, Phil plans his forecast for Groundhog Day, the weather holiday of the year. But one Groundhog Day, after months of hibernation underground, Phil and his family overslept. It was nearly a disaster for everyone in Gobbler's Knob. Chapter 2. The Groundhog Morning Rush Hour. Phil and his family were cozy and warm in their beds, but it was very cold outside. The wind howled and knocked at the door. The sound awoke Phil. He touched the dirt on the ground and the wall to see if it was hard or soft. Then he nudged Philomena. There was a sense of urgency in his voice as he spoke. "Wake up, Philomena. I think we've overslept. Today is Groundhog Day. I can't be late for work. Can you and Barney awaken the children and get them ready for the forecast?" "Well, happy Groundhog Day, Phil," said Philomena, who had hurried into the kitchen. Don't forget that you promised we could have an open hole today if it's an early spring, and invite our friends to visit our Hole Sweet Hole. Remember, you can't find your shadow today because I want to have a party to celebrate spring. So, all I have to do is wake the children. The Groundhog Day rush hour was on. Philomena and Barney rushed through the burrow to wake the 9 sleepy children, but they were in for a very rude awakening. Hurry, children. Today is Groundhog Day. Remember, if Daddy can't find his shadow, we're having guests for brunch, said Philomena. So rise and get ready. Tidy your rooms and put on your best groundhog grins. Ooh, yes. We can't wait to go outdoors. Maybe there will be a rainbow, said Sunny and Halo as they arose. We think we can hear birds singing already. Go outdoors? That's ridiculous. Has anyone bothered to read the temperature? Mumbled Celsius. It must be near 0 degrees. It's too cold to get up, he said, and he rolled over and went back to bed. We agree with Celsius. Listen to that wind. There must be frost on the ground and icicles on the doors, Frosty, Crystal, and Wendy complained. Then they rolled over and went back to bed. Philomena was not very happy. Next, she tried to awaken Typhoon. Oh, sleet and hail! Can't you hear them tapping on our doors? My forecast is 6 more weeks of winter mush. Count me out, grumbled Typhoon. And guess what? He rolled over and went back to bed. A disgusted Philomena breezed past Typhoon to check on Barney. Maybe Barney was having better luck. Barney was standing in the middle of what looked like a real tornado. He was in Tornado's bedroom, but he couldn't find the hog. The room was a mess. Dirt, leaves, and hay were scattered everywhere. Somewhere among the rubble, Tornado was asleep. Barney left Tornado and joined Philomena to try to awaken Foggy. No luck. Foggy was dreaming of hay rides, pumpkins, and Halloween. I think we're in trouble. We can't have a Groundhog Day forecast with half our family asleep, said Barney. Naturally, we'd better tell Phil about this disaster. Chapter 3, Phil's Weather Station. Philomena and Barney stormed into Phil's weather station. Isia and Phil were so engaged in their weather gauges that they didn't notice them. Phil was standing on a rock at his weather lookout, spying through a peephole. There were many signs of nature that Phil used to make his forecast. He looked at the sky to see the shape and the color of the clouds. Phil saw a layer of flat gray stratus clouds. Then he looked at the weather vane and the windsock on the Byler's farmhouse. They showed the direction of the wind. Phil decided the wind was blowing from the south. Winds that blow from the northwest often bring clearer and colder weather. On Groundhog Day, if it is bright and clear, there will be 2 winters in the year. Next, Phil calculated the speed of the wind by watching the windmill and the anemometer. There was a gentle breeze. Isia watched the birds outside. They were facing the wind. Isia knew that birds and cows often turn and face into the direction of the wind. They don't like to have their feathers or fur ruffled. Also, winds that blow from the south make it easier for birds to fly. Isia couldn't wait until he became a moth and was able to fly. While getting down from his perch, Isia stumbled over a metal can. As he admired his reflection in the can, he noticed his fur. It seemed thinner, and he had a wide brown band around his middle. I've got to get some food in this tummy soon, and I need a new coat, said Isia. Phil looked out the peephole at the pine trees. The scales on the pine cones were shut, which meant that there was moisture or water in the air. So Phil checked his homemade barometer. A barometer measures the air pressure and helps predict a storm. A rise in the air pressure indicates clear weather. A drop in pressure often means a storm is coming. In Phil's barometer, his tree frog, Horace Greenfeet, was croaking in the water. This was a sign that the pressure had dropped and a storm might be approaching. Isia wormed himself towards another peephole to check the amount of rain in the rain gauge. Then he read the thermometers for the air and soil temperatures. "Come along, Isia," said Phil. "We better hurry. The sun will be rising soon." Phil and Isia huddled together and shared their evidence. The pieces of the weather puzzle fit. "Philomena, it looks like we have good news." "Maybe you have good news, Phil, but we don't. Only 2 of our 9 children are awake," she said. "The other 7 kids are still hibernating, so we're not having a very happy Groundhog Day." This really was a disaster. All the neighborhood animals were outside waiting for Phil. He had to awaken his kids. Time had run out. Phil ran out of the room with the gusto of a hurricane. It was important that his entire family be together today. Punxsutawney Phil stood in the tunnel near the bedrooms. Then he took a big, deep breath and blew out an alarming sound. The shrill sound of Phil's groundhog whistle broke the silence and awoke his sleeping children, all except for Foggy. He was still asleep. Chapter 4. Weather Saves the Day. "Foggy, wake up. It's Groundhog Day. Today is our day, and I want you by my side when I make my forecast," said Phil. "It won't be a happy Groundhog Day without you." "Yes, it will be happier without me. Typhoon and tornadoes said so. They said I was just a no-good fluff of a little ground cloud. I'm not big and strong. Tornado said fog doesn't get recorded in the newspapers like tornadoes and typhoons. They both said I'm weak and unimportant," Foggy confided sadly. "Nonsense. Everyone in our family is important, especially you. Come along and you'll see what I mean," said Phil, taking Foggy by the hand. Cautiously, Phil and Foggy led the family out of their dark underground home. Soon they were standing on the bright, snow-covered ground, looking at the giant mountains of Gobbler's Knob. The mountain peaks were frosted with snow, which made them look like delicious ice cream cones dipped in white chocolate. Phil and his family were brave. They sniffed the air. The cool air was inviting. A fine drizzle of rain began to dampen their heads, but not their spirits. Phil, the seer of seers, looked around. He noticed that a crowd of animals had come to hear his forecast. As he started to take the next step, he jumped back in surprise. Something touched his leg. He glanced suspiciously at the ground. Something moved very slowly. It mounted and grew in size. It surrounded Phil and buried his feet. He struggled to see the ground, but he couldn't. It was shrouded in a mysterious gray veil. Fog. Misty fog rose and slithered along the snowy path like a wet viper. It moved quickly to hide the ground. As it continued to rise, it covered any possibility of Phil ever finding his shadow. There was no shadow of a doubt what this meant. "Early spring!" Phil shouted. "Hear my forecast! Early spring! Thanks to a little cloud named Fog, we're going to have a very happy Groundhog Day." Phil and his family leaped gleefully into the air. All the neighborhood animals cheered. Phil and his family grinned their best groundhog grins, but little Foggy, had the biggest grin of all. Tornado and typhoon swept him off his feet and raised him above them like a king. "The fog brought us spring, Foggy. You'll go down in history. Happy Groundhog Day." It was indeed a very happy Groundhog Day for everyone, thanks to the presence of a little fog. Weather can make a difference.
Copyright 1996, Dove Audio, Incorporated. If you would like to receive a Dove Kids or Dove Audio catalog, please call 1-800-328-3683 or 1-800-328-DOVE.